It was a cold and rainy October evening in 2009 when 17-year-old Emily Carson left her shift at the Maple Ridge Diner. The streets were slick, the sky a dull gray, and the sound of distant thunder echoed through the quiet town. Emily's mother had texted her several times during the evening, but after the last message, her phone went silent. Emily never made it home. Her friends assumed she might have lingered at a nearby convenience store or accepted a ride from someone she knew. But as hours turned into a night and she didn't return, a chilling worry settled over the town. Police launched an immediate search, combing the muddy trails behind the abandoned lumberyard, flashlight beams cutting through the dark, foggy woods. Neighbors joined, calling out her name, their voices swallowed by the heavy night air. Her backpack was later found tossed near a drainage ditch, soaked and empty, as if dropped in haste. Or worse, there were no footprints leading away from it. No signs of a struggle, just the eerie silence of a town gripped by fear. Rumors began to spread, whispers about strange vehicles seen near the lumber yard, and some claimed to have seen shadows moving among the trees that night. As dawn broke over Maple Ridge, the reality sank in. Emily Carson had vanished without a trace. Her parents, frantic and desperate, pleaded with the authorities for answers, handing over lists of friends, acquaintances, and even strangers who had crossed her path. Every lead seemed to fade into thin air, and as the days dragged on, the once tight community of Maple Ridge felt the weight of growing unease. The disappearance wasn't just a missing teenager. It was a haunting mystery that left everyone wondering whether Emily had walked into the night on her own, or if something far more sinister had taken her. For years, Emily's case gathered dust in the Maple Ridge Police archives. Leads went cold, tips dried up, and the town slowly sank into an uneasy silence, each resident haunted by the memory of that rainy night. But in 2024, a statewide digital archive initiative aimed at cataloging old evidence boxes brought the case back into the spotlight. Investigators discovered a long-forgotten box that had never been fully examined. Items that had inexplicably been set aside during the original investigation. Inside, carefully wrapped in tissue, were small but intriguing clues: a torn piece of Emily's sweater, streaked with dried mud, and a curious silver key with the initials RM etched on it. What had been overlooked for 15 years suddenly held the promise of answers. The piece of fabric, though small, was a vital piece of the puzzle. Forensic testing confirmed it carried traces of Emily's skin cells, indicating that it had indeed come into direct contact with her. The mud, when analyzed, revealed it matched soil samples taken near the abandoned lumber yard where she had last been seen. It was a subtle, almost invisible breadcrumb, but it told a story that had been hidden in plain sight for years. Detectives began revisiting old witness statements, looking for any mention of the initials on the mysterious key. Almost immediately, the case took on a new urgency, as if the evidence had been waiting all this time for someone patient enough to notice. Even more unsettling was the sense that the original investigation had missed something far deeper. How had a key and a piece of fabric gone unnoticed for so long? Why had it taken 15 years for modern forensic techniques to bring it to light? Detectives began questioning whether Emily's disappearance had always involved someone close enough to the area to leave such personal items behind. Someone who knew the terrain, the back roads, and the abandoned spots where no one would look. The box of evidence, once ignored, had now become the cornerstone of a cold case that was finally stirring to life, sending shivers through everyone who had been waiting for a breakthrough. With the discovery of the silver key and the mud-stained fabric, detectives finally had a lead pointing towards someone who had been close to Emily the night she disappeared. The initials RM on the key became the first clue in a web of secrets that had lain dormant for years. A deep dive into property records and old employment logs revealed a name: Richard Monroe, a mechanic who had lived just half a mile from the abandoned lumber yard in 2009. At first glance, Monroe seemed like an ordinary man, quiet, respected, and helpful, the type of neighbor who would fix a friend's car without expecting anything in return. But the key and the mysterious evidence suggested a hidden side, one that had gone unnoticed for over a decade. As detectives dug into Monroe's past, they uncovered something chilling. He had moved out of Maple Ridge quietly, shortly after Emily vanished, leaving behind little trace of his life. Former neighbors described him as friendly but private, often keeping to himself in his garage or small workshop. When investigators interviewed those who had crossed paths with him, no one suspected foul play. Yet the fact that he had relocated so abruptly, coupled with the newly discovered evidence bearing his initials, painted a picture far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Each detail seemed to whisper, someone close to the town's daily life had been hiding a dangerous secret. The investigation intensified as detectives scrutinized Monroe's connections and whereabouts during the critical night of Emily's disappearance. Old surveillance footage, witness accounts, and vehicle registrations were combed for any sign of unusual activity. Even his garage and workshop, which had appeared perfectly ordinary, were examined for hidden compartments or overlooked items. The sense of unease grew with each passing day, as the seemingly normal mechanic was slowly revealed to be a person who might have carefully orchestrated Emily's disappearance. It was a stark reminder that evil could be lurking right next door, masked behind a familiar face that the community had trusted for years. With Richard Monroe now a prime suspect, detectives obtained a search warrant for a private storage unit he had been secretly renting under a different name. The unit, tucked away in a nondescript industrial lot on the outskirts of town, appeared empty at first glance. But as officers carefully opened the dusty metal door, they were met with a chilling sight: piles of old Polaroid photographs, stacks of newspapers, and boxes labeled with dates stretching back more than a decade. The room had a strange, eerie order to it, as if someone had meticulously cataloged memories and obsessions for years. And buried within the clutter, shining under the dim fluorescent light, were items that made the detectives' stomachs turn. Emily's bracelet, a necklace she always wore, and small personal belongings that had long been considered lost. Every detail inside the unit seemed deliberate, each object a piece of a puzzle that no one had realized existed. The walls were covered in maps and marked trails around Maple Ridge, some with dates and cryptic notes scribbled in pencil. It became clear that Monroe had been obsessively tracking Emily and possibly other victims, recording every movement, every routine, every vulnerability. The Polaroids depicted familiar faces in mundane settings, but the selection felt like a morbid catalog, a private shrine to secrets only he knew. Detectives couldn't help but feel a cold dread as they realized the scale of Monroe's hidden life, carefully concealed from the world. As forensic teams began meticulously photographing and analyzing every item in the unit, the scope of the investigation grew. Each object, each photo, each note was a potential key to understanding what had happened to Emily that night in 2009. The bracelet alone carried DNA traces matching Emily, confirming she had been inside Monroe's private space. The deeper detectives dug, the more it became apparent that Monroe's seemingly ordinary life had been a fast aid for something far darker. The quiet, trustworthy mechanic of Maple Ridge had been hiding a secret world of obsession and danger, and the storage unit had become the eerie epicenter where the truth finally was beginning to emerge. In early 2025, after months of careful investigation, police finally tracked Richard Monroe to a quiet gas station outside Grand Rapids. The moment officers approached him, there was an unsettling calmness in his demeanor. No panic, no sudden movements, just the cold, blank stare of a man who seemed to have anticipated this moment. He didn't resist when they placed him in handcuffs, and he offered no words, only silence. Detectives felt a chill as they realized this was a man who had spent years meticulously hiding his secrets, now facing exposure. For the residents of Maple Ridge, the arrest was shocking. Not because they suspected Monroe of such dark deeds, but because the friendly neighbor they had trusted for years was capable of such horror. Once in custody, Monroe's storage unit was fully cataloged, revealing an even deeper web of disturbing evidence. Each item, each photograph, each note told a story of obsession and manipulation. Detectives uncovered hidden compartments containing personal items of Emily's that had never been reported missing, suggesting she had been under his control for a period of time. The forensic team also discovered fibers, fingerprints, and traces of DNA linking him directly to the night of Emily's disappearance. Every piece of evidence painted a grim picture of premeditation and secrecy, turning what had once seemed like an unsolvable mystery into a chilling reality that shook the small Michigan town to its core. News of the arrest spread like wildfire. Families who had long feared for Emily's fate were finally faced with the horrifying truth, and the town struggled to reconcile the image of the harmless mechanic with the reality of the man behind the crime. Detectives knew there were still questions left unanswered. How long Monroe had been planning this, whether he had other victims, and what truly happened during that fateful night in 2009. But one thing was clear: after 15 years of uncertainty, Maple Ridge could no longer ignore the darkness that had been living in plain sight. And the arrest of Richard Monroe was the beginning of a reckoning the community would never forget. As the courtroom doors closed and Richard Monroe was led away, Maple Ridge began to breathe a cautious sigh of relief. After 15 long years of fear, unanswered questions, and sleepless nights, Emily's family finally had the truth they had been desperate for. But the town would never forget the lesson this case left behind. Evil can hide behind the most ordinary faces, and sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones capable of the darkest secrets. Emily's story is a reminder that even in the quietest towns, shadows can linger for years, and justice, no matter how delayed, will eventually find its way. As the community begins to heal, one thing remains clear: the truth, when finally revealed, has the power to shock, to heal, and to haunt for generations to come.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.